I don't know why, but he says it's important, so they will see if they can use me. I want to be smart. Just let those words sink in for a second. With all that phonetic spelling and just heartbreakingly simple longing, you are instantly pulled right into the mind of Charlie Gordon. I mean, this single sentence completely hooks us into what is easily one of the most emotional, profound, and honestly highly debated sci-fi stories ever put to paper.
So let's dive right into this explainer. Today we're unpacking the brilliant, incredibly polarizing, and deeply human masterpiece that is Daniel Keyes' Flowers for Algernon. We're going to explore a story that totally forces us to look at the very nature of human connection and ask ourselves, is the relentless pursuit of ultimate intellect actually worth the price of our own happiness?
All right, Section 1, The Mouse and the Man.
To really grasp the massive legacy of this work, we've got to start with the central premise. And man, the tragic irony it explores is just wild. Our main guy is Charlie Gordon. He's a 32-year-old man with a severe intellectual disability, working as a janitor and errand boy at a local bakery. Well, Charlie gets chosen to be the very first human test subject for this revolutionary experimental surgery that's designed to artificially boost intelligence. Up until now, they'd only done this on animals, most famously on a white lab mouse named Algernon, who suddenly started blitzing through incredibly complex mazes like it was nothing. So Charlie gets the exact same procedure, and what follows is this massive, mind-blowing spike in his IQ, which tragically turns out to be temporary.
Moving on to Section 2, The Power of Perspective.
Now, the plot itself is absolutely fascinating, but the way Keyes delivers this story, that is what makes it a total literary masterpiece. He uses this brilliant narrative device that literally traps us inside Charlie's evolving brain. The whole thing unfolds through Charlie's first-person journal entries, which he spells progress reports. Early on, it's all phonetic spelling, zero punctuation, super basic vocabulary. But then, as the surgery kicks in, we literally watch his intellect skyrocket right there on the page. Suddenly, he's throwing around words like subconscious and tremendous achievement, grasping super complex math and psychology. But here's the catch. The sheer brilliance of this format is exactly what makes it so cruel. Because when the experiment inevitably starts to fail, we are forced to watch Charlie's writing regress, typo by typo, right back to where he started. It's devastating.
And that brings us to a really crucial point. Charlie quickly realizes that his newfound genius? Yeah, it is not the amazing gift he thought it'd be. See, before the surgery, he genuinely thought his bakery coworkers were his best friends. He had no idea they were actually just laughing at him. As his brain power surges, that whole dynamic shifts from pity to just straight-up fear and alienation. He becomes so intensely smart that he literally cannot relate to anyone around him anymore. The very intelligence he thought would finally bring him human connection and happiness, it just leaves him profoundly, devastatingly isolated.
Which leads us to Section 3, Inspired by Real Life. You know, whenever you look into Daniel Keyes, one question always seems to pop up online. Is this based on a true story? Well, the short answer is no. The novel itself is pure science fiction. But here's the thing. The emotional core of the whole narrative, that was actually deeply inspired by some very real events from Keyes' own life. Keyes actually pulled a lot from his own background. He was a psychology grad, and early on in his career, he worked as a teacher for developmentally disabled adults in New York. He used to say he kept the memories of those teaching days tucked away in the cellar of his mind. During that time, he actually witnessed a student with learning difficulties make this dramatic, incredible progress, only to tragically regress completely when they had to be removed from the lessons. The student lost everything, reverting right back to the start, even losing the ability to read. Keyes called it a heartbreaker, and honestly, you can feel that exact sentiment pulsing through every single page of the novel.
But there was one specific encounter that really lit the spark for this story. Keyes had a student come up to him once with a direct question he never, ever forgot. The student asked if he tried really hard and got smart, could he be moved to a regular class? That simple, desperate plea, I want to be smart, literally became the emotional anchor and the entire motivation for the character of Charlie Gordon. It's just incredible how a passing conversation can birth a masterpiece, right?
Let's take a quick look at how the legacy of this story played out over the years. It originally dropped back in 1959 as a short story, and it hit so hard and was so insanely impactful that Keyes expanded it into a full, best-selling novel by 1966. Just 2 years later, bam! It's a major feature film called Charlie. But as the book rolled into the 70s, 80s, and 90s, things got complicated. It went from being this universally celebrated sci-fi triumph to sitting right in the crosshairs of cultural and educational battlegrounds.
And that brings us to Section 4, Controversy and Censorship.
So despite its massive critical success, the mature themes in the novel made it a huge target for censorship across the US. It's a wildly polarized reception. On one hand, you've got the sci-fi community showering it with praise. Keyes snagged the Hugo Award for the short story, the Nebula Award for the novel, and sold literally millions of copies. But right alongside all those shiny accolades is some serious pushback. The American Library Association actually ranked it 47th on their list of the most frequently challenged books, and it faced outright bans in school districts across Pennsylvania, Texas, and Arkansas.
Now, objectively speaking, parents and schools were challenging the book mostly because of its mature content. See, as Charlie's brainpower expands, his emotional and physical awareness wakes up too. This leads to some introspective sexual encounters, especially with his former teacher, Alice. The folks challenging the book argued that these scenes, plus the adult language, the drinking, and the whole moral gray area of playing God with human intelligence, were just way too heavy and inappropriate for a high school classroom.
All right, on to our final section, Section 5, the Adaptation Challenge.
Trying to translate this super intimate, totally written narrative into a visual medium like film or TV, it has always been a massive point of debate because visual mediums inherently struggle to capture the real magic of Charlie's written journal entries. As a reader, your empathy is completely tied to watching him struggle to put a sentence together, then seeing his spelling become flawless, and then that sickening dread when you spot the first typo returning. When you adapt it into a standard movie, you lose those first-person progress reports. And a lot of fans argue that stripping that away removes the exact thing that connects us so deeply to Charlie's mind.
But hey, despite that massive hurdle, the story is just too good, so creators keep taking a swing at it. The 1968 film Charlie actually did incredibly well, with Cliff Robertson taking home an Oscar for Best Actor. Then you had Matthew Modine starring in a 2000 TV movie trying to capture that same tragedy. The story's cultural footprint is so huge that it even pops up in modern sitcoms. I mean, think of that classic It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia episode, Flowers for Charlie, where they do a brilliant, hilarious spoof of someone suddenly getting an unearned leap in intellect.
But bring it all back to the original text, its impact on the literary world is absolutely undeniable. Even the absolute titans of science fiction were floored by what Keyes pulled off. Isaac Asimov himself wrote about reading the story, and he basically said he was just lost in admiration for how delicate the emotion was and how incredibly skilled the execution was. He literally just asked, how did he do it? Keyes somehow managed to walk this tightrope, perfectly balancing an unbelievable masterclass in human empathy with a really high-concept sci-fi premise. Later in life, Keyes reflected on the ultimate message of his defining work, and he left us with a pretty sobering realization about the limits of the human mind. He said, "I've learned that intelligence alone doesn't mean a damn thing. It only leads to violence and pain." It's a really stark reminder, isn't it? Intellect, when it's completely stripped of emotional connection, empathy, and community, well, that's just a really dark, lonely place to find yourself. So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final thought to chew on. Imagine, just for a second, that you actually had the opportunity to surgically, artificially boost your intelligence to completely unimaginable heights. Would you do it, knowing the profound, crushing isolation it might bring? Is the ultimate pursuit of intellect actually worth risking the simple, beautiful, everyday connections that make us human? It's the exact same question Daniel Keyes challenged us with decades ago, and you know what? We're still trying to figure out the answer today.